Beatle became close, advancing his unique philosophy of sense purification, self-surrender, and the chanting of the 16-word Hare Krishna mantra. Prabhupada ultimately became Harrison's spiritual master. Although the Swami passed away in mid-1977, George has remained true to his teachings, incorporating the practice of devotional yoga or bhakti into his everyday life. Although the Guru's prohibitions against meat-eating, intoxication, and illicit sex have been difficult for George to follow, they have at least challenged him to try and work towards the goal of inner purity, even as the external circumstances of his life have become more and more demanding and stressful. Lennon, too, was intent upon leaving the Beatles behind and thus latched onto Yoko Ono as his means of escape. One of their first experiments in so-called total communication was their 1969 Bedding for Peace in Montreal. Initially, it all seemed to make sense in a rather sneaky left-handed way, but as the years passed, it just looks curiouser and curiouser. What follows is an impromptu press conference held in Denmark at the rural home of Yoko's ex-husband Anthony Cox and daughter Kyoko.
About your visiting. I've heard two rumours. I just heard a new one today on the Daily Express that I bought 70 acres of land here. Every country I go to, the press seem to think I'm going to buy 70 acres of land. I've just been to Greece recently and I thought I was going to buy land there, and Canada or whatever. I've got no other land except for some in England and Ireland. We came to see Kyoko, you know. Had to see Tony and Melinda, of course, but Kyoko was the axis point of coming, you know. And we've had a nice 7 days of peace. What kind of man are you really? I'm a nervous guy, you know.
Do you and Yoko believe in peace in our time?
Yeah. We have this poster that says, war is over if you want it. We all sit round pointing fingers at Nixon and the leaders of the country saying, he gave us peace or he gave us war. It's our responsibility what happens around the world, in every other country as well as your own. It's our responsibility for Vietnam and Biafra and the Israel war and all the other wars that we don't quite hear about. It's all our responsibility, and when we all want peace, we'll get it. I support humanity, you know. I don't belong to any left-wing, right-wing, middle-wing, Black Panthers, white Christians, Protestant Catholics, or nothing. People have said we're naive for trying to sell peace like a bar of soap. And I want to ask you, is Mr. Ford naive? Or the soap powder factory naive? They're selling the same old soap that's been around for 2,000 years, but it's new blue soap, so we're selling new blue peace. And we hope some of you buy it, you know. The war is here now. And there's two ways of looking at it. Some people say, why don't you spend your money on posters or peace campaigns? Why don't you give it to the Biafran children or something like that? And we say, we're trying to cure cancer, we're trying to prevent cancer and not cure it.
Did you spend all your money?
No,
They said that
no,
the Beatles made a lot of money.
no, yeah, but the people around us made more money than the Beatles did, I'll tell you that. None of the Beatles are millionaires. But there's a lot of millionaires that made millions, who became millionaires around the Beatles. You know the story. I don't know, we play everything by ear, you know. We try not to make plans. I don't really like know what we're going to do for the next 8 months. And we just stay until it was time to go back and do some work, you know.
You feeling comfortable out there?
Oh, it's beautiful, you know. It's beautiful, and all the snow and everything. You know, we go walking in the garden and all that. It's beautiful. or whatever, the farm or something. Oh yeah, and all the colours and the sky and the mist and it's just a fantastic place, you know. And good vibes, as they say in this generation. Very good vibes around. And just the people we met very few, you know, but they're straight, you know. They're not as paranoid as in the big cities, you know, and in other countries. They're less paranoid in Denmark.
Strawberry Fields, the most genuinely mystical of all places relating to the Beatles. Now, John Lennon lived around here as a little boy and used to come here in the summer to garden fetch where he'd play with the other inmates of the orphanage. Now, there used to be a wonderful stone, Dracula-style Victorian building where they lived, which has since been torn down and replaced by another. But everything else is still here. When one comes here, one feels very strongly the same sense of unreality that John Lennon felt and was reflected in the song. There's the trees, the sky, the leaves in the ground, the bright red the gates, and of course the famous pillars that have been photographed time and time again. This is a place where John Lennon would come to find refuge. After all, he had a troubled childhood, certainly. He didn't get to see his mother and father as much as he would have liked, and lived with a rather strict aunt and a doting uncle, and was in many ways disconnected from his family and therefore himself. But when he came here, he had a feeling, which was reflected in the song, "Let me take you down because I'm going to Strawberry Fields where nothing is real." One gets the feeling that he felt safe here, that it was a place that he could come with the other kids who were obviously orphans and weren't really connected to their families either, and be freer somehow. His secret garden where he could dream, because John was a dreamy little boy. So Strawberry Fields, above and beyond any other song, reflects John's connection to the mystical, that feeling of searching throughout his entire life, and here he may have found it. Interestingly, he traveled all around the world, but it could have been this very first place that he came to seek refuge, that he really did find that peace that was so elusive throughout his entire life. George Harrison, his home, in this case, the Gothic Victorian Disneyland Friar Park, is definitely his castle. Purchased by 19th century solicitor and philosopher Sir Frank Crisp in 1899, the spacious estate was decorated by its founder with quasi-religious sayings and caricatures carved in stone everywhere. Some of it is actually quite good prose, too, as with this piece etched over the portals of the great house. "Scan not a friend with a microscopic glass. You know his faults, but let his foibles pass. Life is one long enigma, true, my friend. So read on, the answer's at the end." Harrison was certainly profoundly struck by both the persona of Sir Frank and his mystical homespun philosophy. If, as the Bible says, it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven, then George may well have a hard time claiming his eternal reward, as he is that much in love with the old stones and mortar that make up his eccentric millionaire's retreat.